Hello, welcome to Glendale Today. I'm Councilmember Sammy Chavira, and I represent residents living in the Yucca District, located in southwestern Glendale. As a father and as a council member, when I look at youth of our community, I see such potential and promise. Unfortunately, so much of that promise is lost to substance abuse. Whether it's alcohol, drugs, marijuana, inhalants, or now prescription drug abuse, prevention is the key. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. A lot of you don't know that I had a little brother who was lost to drug abuse, and also I have many friends and family that have been affected by it. As many as our residents live in the Yucca District or throughout Glendale. Today, I'm very pleased to have Drug Free AZ, an incredible community resource available to parents and employers. Here to tell us about the organization are Theresa Londoño and Kim Obert. Theresa and Kim are managers at drugfreeaz.org. Welcome, ladies. Kim, my first question is, who is drugfreeaz.org? Can you give us an overview of your organization?
Sure. Drugfreeaz.org is the Arizona affiliate of a national organization, the Partnership at Drug Free America. They recently changed their name to the Partnership at drugfree.org because what our research has shown us is that parents want to go online first to find their information. That's why our name is really drugfreeaz.org. So parents know right where to go to reach us and get the information they need. The organization was started in 1986, and it has a sad beginning. It was formed as a result of an NBA basketball rookie by the name of Len Bias, who had been drafted to the Boston Celtics.
I remember that.
Gone out, celebrated, snorted some cocaine, and then proceeded to drop dead of a heart attack. And people were just saying, oh my gosh, nobody said you could die from using cocaine. People weren't talking about it. There wasn't any messaging. And you know, for those that can remember the 1980s, there was an awful lot of cocaine use around at that time. So there were some advertising executives that got together and talked about the fact that they could sell cars, they could sell breakfast cereal, they could sell laundry soap. And they said, why can't we unsell drugs? And they put together a public service announcement that featured a frying pan and an egg. It said, this is your brain on drugs.
This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs.
And that public service announcement continues to be shown today, and most people do recognize that. And then they know that that's the origins of our organization. In 2003, drugfreeaz.org became an independent 501c3 servicing the Arizona area. And we do prevention work, prevention and education in the community.
Kim, you know firsthand about the pain substance abuse can cause. Would you mind sharing some of your story and telling us how it led you to get involved with this organization?
Thank you. I do have a sad story. I lost my son at 18 and a half years old. It's been 10 years now, and not a day goes by that I don't think of, you know, my sweet boy, and think about the choices that he made, and is there something that I could have done differently to prevent this? Unfortunately, I didn't know a lot about the risks associated with substance abuse, especially prescription drugs. When Kent was 18 and a half, there were some kids that came over. Now this is a kid at 18 and a half. He was in his second year of college. He was working as the number 3 employee of a small internet-based company, so he had founder's stock. This was an on-the-ball kid. He had done a lot of things in his short life. Gone on missions trips, he'd been a Boy Scout, you know, all sorts of good things. And some kids brought over some prescription drugs, and they crushed them up, and they drank them with alcohol, and my son went to sleep, and he just simply never woke up.
Oh my.
And just a tragic accident. And I spent the first 3 years after he died kind of trying to figure out how to breathe, how to deal with the grief, and what could I do with that. And about 3 years after my son had died, I saw an interview on TV with drugfreeaz.org and thought, you know, I've got a background in marketing, communications, PR. Maybe I could do something to help them out. And I began to volunteer and did that for about 4 years. And then I like to say that I made the very interesting decision in my mid-50s to go from working at a corporate gig to full-time at a nonprofit. So I really have just a strong passion for helping parents and kids understand the risks and the dangers that are out there. You know, our kids are not expendable.
No, ma'am.
Not
Kim,
one of them.
also, I want to thank you for sharing that story with us, but also I really want to thank you for taking something so negative, something so hurtful, and turning it into something positive. You know, even though drugs did take your son's life, it didn't happen in vain. And right now what you're doing in his memory, and every time you save somebody's life or you give advice to somebody, it's in your son's name.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Teresa, talk about your experience in education, social work, and your role as a program manager, and tell us why prevention is so important.
Well, as a teacher and as a social worker in the past, my role was to partner with parents and help them, work closely with them for the benefit of their children in some way. And that's still at the heart of what I do when I facilitate the parent workshops. I help parents by facilitating rich discussion during the sessions, and when they go home and they implement, put into practice the concepts that we talked about, I encourage them to be introspective so that they can better understand the interpersonal dynamics of what's happening in the family. And that can lead them to a better understanding of what's happening in the family, and better problem solving can result from that, stronger family relationships, better communication. And all of that really is at the heart of prevention. And that's so important because the vast majority of adults with substance abuse problems today started at very young ages. And if we can reach kids, you know, through those risky teen years and even into early adulthood, and get them through that time drug-free, then there's, you know, the chances that they'll ever have a substance abuse problem really drops off dramatically. So, you know, that's why this is so important to me, and prevention is so important to the community.
How do we get the kids through their teen years?
You know, it takes a lot of work from the parents to be able to do that. We know that if we can reach the parents and educate them on the risks associated with substance abuse, and even help them understand their role as a parent and how they can do that. You know, we're in a time right now where we have a lot of parents that are very bewildered as to how to parent, because the type of parenting that they received doesn't really work in today's society, but yet they haven't been given any alternatives. That very autocratic, you know, well, as long as you live in my house, it'll go by my rules, which is what my dad used to say. I had a very healthy fear of my dad, and so did most of my friends. That kept us out of a lot of trouble. But that doesn't really work today. And what parents need to understand is that never before in our society has the media and the culture had such an invasion into our very homes. I've had one mom at a parenting workshop say, I feel like it's trying to invade every window and every door into my home, and I don't know how I can build a wall around my house to protect my kids. And so that launches into a great discussion about building that awareness, strengthening those family bonds. Kids that are well bonded to their parents are far less likely to use drugs and alcohol than those kids that don't have those strong bonds. So it's all about educating the parents, equipping them with tools and techniques that they can use to strengthen those family bonds.
Absolutely, I agree, and I'm glad you mentioned about, you know, technology today, social media, all the access that our kids, you know, have today, and at the same opportunity we have to talk to them about, you know, their friends and the things they should do, we should also monitor, you know, the social media component.
Absolutely.
And which is, I'm glad that you touched on that. But besides that, what are the greatest risks facing our youth today?
Well, the greatest risks are going to be substance abuse, violence, and high-risk sex. Those are really the top three things that can really derail our kids and put them on a path that is not going to be good for their future.
Absolutely, and this is a perfect segue because we already touched on a few things. What can parents do to help reduce those risks?
Well, the main thing that they can do is educate themselves on those topics, especially with the substance abuse, and then spend some time talking with their kids. And this is not a one-time drug talk where we want them to sit down for an hour and go through the whole thing. The same thing with a sex talk or a violence talk. It's not a one-time thing. These topics, because they're so prevalent in our society, they need to just be woven into the fabric of our everyday family life, so that when things come up and we hear about them on the news, that we can incorporate that into our family discussions. Well, what do you think about, that particular incident happening? And get the kids talking about it so that you can understand where they're coming from and what their foundational beliefs are. Okay, we have to transfer our beliefs and our values to our kids. This is something that used to happen sitting around the dinner table.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it doesn't happen like that anymore. So parents have to be more intentional about transferring those family values, transferring the family mission and vision onto their kids, and let them know that drugs and alcohol, high-risk sex and violence are not going to be a part of that.
And that's perfect. And this is not a one-time thing. This is perpetual education, perpetual awareness, because these dangers are around us all the time. Being a firefighter, we talk about fire safety. Keep watching your kids around water, and then now that what's taking place now with people texting and being inattentive on the road, causing accidents. Theresa, can you tell our viewers what is meant by being an active parent?
Well, an active parent is, it's a style of parenting, but more than that, it's an evidence-based method of parenting. It's intentional and proactive in nature. Instead of waiting for a problem to crop up and then, scrambling to try to react to that problem, the method is really anticipating possible problems and inviting the participation of all the family members to talk about possible solutions, brainstorm. Well, how could we handle this? What's important? Talk about the values like Kim was talking about, and then put a plan in place so that either the problem can be sidestepped and avoided, or if the problem does occur, the family will be better prepared to deal with it effectively so that they can move on and learn from it and deal with it positively. An example of that might be having a rescue plan in place. A parent could start a conversation with their child about a situation that if the child were to be in a risky situation, but yet they felt kind of embarrassed about calling their parents for a ride home, the parent could ask their child, what would you do in that situation? And really have a serious talk about what would work for that child. What would work so that that child could effectively deal with the situation and get themselves out of harm's way. These approaches, are very effective to deal with problems or avoid problems that relate to substance abuse, but they're really effective for any kind of problem that parents and children face.
Like we talked earlier, like Kim had mentioned about sitting around the kitchen table and talking, I guess we can all agree that communication is key. To always be able to communicate with our children and letting them know that they can always communicate with us.
Yes.
And one of the practices I use with my daughters, even though they're 11 and 13, some subjects for being a dad are sometimes just a little bit to me they'll always be my little girls. But I make sure that my temperament is in a good place, and whatever they want to tell me, I'll listen. And afterwards, I can go to my wife and I go, "Honey, this is what they're telling me." But one of the things that you mentioned is you said evidence-based, and I think that's important. Can you talk about what that means?
Sure. These programs, the workshops that we bring to the community have been around for many years.
So think about their character. Who are they? What are they like? What's your relationship with them like?
And over 1 million families have participated all over the country during that time. And there have been studies done that followed many of those families over the long term. And they found that the parents who invested those 12 hours in the workshop, you know, they're 6 2-hour sessions, so 12 hours altogether, that investment of 12 hours can result in benefits for the family that last a decade. And those benefits might look like kids that are making better decisions, making healthy decisions, closer family relationships where everybody is on the same page when it comes to family values, better problem solving, all of those things. In addition to those studies that were done, these programs are also listed in the National Registry for Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. So they're recognized nationally as being effective programs.
You know, I really like that. I like how you just mentioned, you touched on something very important, and that was the investment of time. When we talk about investments, we think about, you know, from a monetary aspect, you know, then the return of interest you get on making a good monetary investment. But with the return of investment on investing in your children, you know, to talk to them and spend that time is priceless.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like active parenting is really important. Take a minute to tell the viewers some of the ways to teach parents to use this style.
First of all, we talk about parenting styles, and you know, we have the passive doormat style of parenting where the kids kind of call the shots, and those parents tend to hope for their kids' cooperation. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have the autocratic, dictatorial type parent who tries to demand their child's cooperation. And an active parent kind of falls in the middle of that spectrum between those two extremes, where the parent will provide appropriate boundaries and give their child freedom within those appropriate boundaries. As the child grows and becomes ready for increased freedom by showing increased responsibility, then the parent can kind of expand those boundaries. Active parents also include their children in family decisions. They welcome their children's participation in the family. That doesn't mean that the kids always get their way. They like to say in the program that the kids have their say, they don't necessarily get their way. You know, the parents are still very much the leaders of the family. Another thing that's important is that active parents allow their kids to grow by allowing them to deal with certain problems. You know, they don't try to run in and smooth away and make everything nice and smooth and easy for their kids all the time. They know, you know, when it's appropriate to allow their child to struggle, knowing that their child will grow and become stronger and a better problem solver in the end.
You know, and it's truly a fine line. Like you mentioned earlier, you know, the doormat component, you know, where the child gets their way. And then also you have the extreme was when you hear something, you're very reactive to the point where you almost push it away, but they don't want to tell you anything anymore.
Right.
But the bottom line, I think the foundation of all that is being active with your children, communicate with your children and you know, spending time, because that, you know, you develop a relationship that you have to the point where it becomes a safety line, but not something that's going to stifle them or hinder you from doing what you're doing.
Right.
Kim, you said earlier that getting them through their teen years is the key. Why are children and teens so much at risk today?
Well, part of it is just because of the physiological and the physical development of their brain. You know, the teen brain does not complete its development until about the mid-20s. And the last part of the brain to develop is this, you know, prefrontal cortex that we have. You can kind of think of that as the executive command center. That's where impulse control takes place, morality, evaluating consequences, using good judgment, risk-taking, those type of things, all function up here, and that doesn't finish developing until about the mid-20s. So if you think about it, over the years, there's been one industry that was aware of that and used that to their advantage. The one thing that you can't do until you're 25 years old is rent a car. So obviously, they looked at the statistics of accidents and saw that after age 25, accident rates dropped off. And that's because the brain is beginning to work as a whole. Before age 25, you have kind of the emotional center. You know how teens can be so emotional, overacting, and they have a lack of impulse control. So this is one of the reasons why we have to develop that relationship with our kids. And as Theresa was saying, have that rescue plan. That's something that we need to work with our kids, building those resiliency skills over and over again, because they don't remember, and they tend to react before they stop and think. So as your child's heading out the door, even just a quick, hey, before you leave, remember, stop and think. Don't just jump into something. Think about the consequences and make good decisions. Okay? There might be beer at this party that you're going to. How would you react if somebody said, hey, do you want a beer? What would you say? And get that planted right at the forefront of their mind, because we want those responses to be quick. No thanks, I don't want a beer. Do you have a soda?
That's incredible advice. You know, and I love the idea of a rescue plan, because when most people think of a rescue plan, we think of it reacting during an emergency, whether it's a fire, whether it's a natural disaster. Even though we might not implement that emergency plan, we're always ready. We know what to do. And I think this is some great advice that you're giving our audience out there, is that to have this rescue plan, because those dangers are out there that that will affect our children, our friends or family. And so I'm really glad that you're giving us that advice. We have one of your PSAs that illustrates brain development very well. Let's take a look.
One of the areas still maturing in an adolescent brain is the prefrontal cortex. So when we take drugs, we alter key motivational circuits, changing the wiring needed for the cognitive function of the brain, until we can't totally deal with things like memory, thinking things out, and even learning stuff.
The signs are there. So is our help. Visit the partnership at drugfree.org for practical advice on coping with teen drug use.
Fortunately, that transformation doesn't happen that fast. It happens over time.
Yes, that's very true, and that's why it's so important for parents to act as filters for their kids during that time when they're so vulnerable, those teen and young adult years. We have to think about the think, feel, do cycle. What goes in is what's going to come out. What a child hears and thinks about is going to resonate. That's going to affect the way they think. That's going to affect the way that they feel. And then that's going to determine what they do or what they say. So it's very important for parents to be involved and act as a filter for their kids.
Absolutely, and that's very important, and it's important in saying that. Theresa, how can parents find out about the programs you offer?
Well, if they go to our website, drugfreeaz.org, they can find a listing of all the offerings that we have in the community. They're all over the valley. Many of them are offered right here in Glendale, so we hope your viewers will visit our calendar on the website. There's also prevention, intervention, treatment information, webinars, the drug guide that's very useful, that parents can educate themselves about the substances in their children's world out there. There's some teen resources to help teens learn how to handle negative peer pressure, and also information if anybody's interested in having us come out and speak.
Well, ladies, I really want to thank you for being here today. You gave us some very important information that I know that people will be able to access and help their children or help somebody they know. Thank you for being my guest, Kim and Theresa. The information you shared with us today is invaluable. Please stay tuned. When we return, Chief Debora Black will take a few minutes to give us her feedback on how substance abuse affects our community and how she's working with Drug Free AZ to get their message out to families. We'll be right back.
I would steal pills from my friend's mom.
We talk about all the common drugs, but never prescription medication.
I was addicted to pills.
Had I more knowledge, I would have done things differently.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
Ronnie had huge aspirations.
He knew he could get pills in the community.
He found his body in an apartment in Telford.
I never thought my son would take prescription drugs without a prescription.
Secure your medications and talk with your kids. Visit drugfree.org.
It's very important for kids to learn how to solve problems when the stakes are small. if we let them learn how to fail and solve problems when they're little, they'll develop those problem-solving skills so that when they're young adults, when they're teens, and they have a failure or they have a problem, they're going to be able to solve it. They'll have the skills to handle that.
Welcome back to Glendale Today. I'm Councilmember Sam Chavira. My guest for this segment is Glendale's Police Chief, Debora Black. Chief, welcome and thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you.
Chief, earlier I spoke with Theresa and Kim from Drug Free AZ in the last segment about how drug abuse can affect families. Can you talk about how substance abuse affects the community?
Well, first and foremost, it's the impact to families, and we see it in public safety. You've seen it personally yourself, that tragedy that occurs when abuse is in the home, when you, in worst case scenario, there's an overdose involved. So that's first in my mind, that we need to do everything we can to prevent that harm to families. Secondly, there's a very strong connection to crime. The very possession of drugs is a crime. And then it drives a lot of our crime, property crime, retail theft. A lot of that is directly related to the desire to get the funds, the money to purchase the drugs. So it perpetuates crime in our community as well.
And it's sad that that's a negative effect of that. There are always new dangers out there. What are the new trends that are causing concerns for the department?
Well, really two things. Prescription drug abuse in teens exceeds all use of cocaine, methamphetamine, and ecstasy combined. So prescription drug abuse is the biggest issue we have in Arizona in teens, and the problem is these substances are readily available. A lot of times they're found in a medicine cabinet at home, medicine cabinet at friends' homes, and then again, burglaries. A lot of our burglaries, we find people are going through medicine cabinets to find those substances. The other thing is the synthetic drugs, spice and bath salts. Now we've had some legislation, some new law that will help us with that. But those are the two biggest new threats that we're seeing.
Yeah, you know, whoever thought that your medicine cabinet or even, you know, the corner street down the store could be just as dangerous as, you know, leaving a gun or something unattended at home, you know, with, you know, it's all about education. I know you've really gotten behind Drug Free AZ and their campaign. How is the police department working with this wonderful organization?
So we realize we cannot arrest our way out of this problem, that we really need to help parents get the information they need to protect their kids. I can't promise that their kids will never be exposed to drugs in their community, in their schools, or whatever. I'll do my best. We have a lot of officers that are dedicated to that work, but we have to make sure that if they are presented that opportunity, that they have the right answer. So Drug Free AZ is very good at delivering that message through parenting programs that they deliver to the schools, and we've worked with them to obtain grants for that. Our SROs have the information and also work within the schools, and we even provided a parenting class for our own employees.
See, that's incredible. You never think about taking care of the caretakers. So Chief, first of all, I want to thank you for your time, for your service, and your commitment to our community. And thank you for being my guest.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Kim, Theresa, and Chief Black brought a strong message. I hope you'll be inspired to begin a conversation with your kids. Please consider visiting the drugfreeaz.org website and even enrolling in one of their parenting classes. Drug Free AZ is your partner in raising healthy, drug-free children. See you next time on Glendale Today.